Hello, my name is Kendall Wilson, and I'm going to be talking about visual perception in terms of cognitive processes for my cognition class. And I will also be proposing a study that will hopefully um, kind of build upon the knowledge that we already have about visual perception if it were to be carried out. Again, this is just kind of a proposal, hypothetical. So visual perception is not just seeing visual stimuli. It's not just looking, it goes beyond that. It is the actual process of taking in information visually and then interpreting it. And so it involves, of course, your eyes and all of your eye, and then different systems of the brain, and all of these things have to work together simultaneously and pretty much instantaneously in order to create all of the things that we are able to see and perceive around us. And so in order to kind of understand that a little bit more, I'm going to talk just a little bit about the physiology of visual perception, about the neurological aspects of it. So the first thing that happens whenever visual perception occurs is light from the visual stimulus will hit our cornea, which is that outer protective layer, it's kind of like a window, and it's around our entire eye. And so it'll hit the cornea, and then the next place it'll go is to the pupil. And the pupil, the iris's job, the colored part around your pupil, is responsible for actually controlling how much light is let into the pupil. So when you're in a place that's really dimly lit, your pupils are going to dilate to take in more light. When you're in a place that's really brightly lit, your pupils are going to constrict, so you will take in less light. And so from the pupil, it will go to the lens, which is situated just behind the cornea and the pupil. So cornea, pupil, and then lens. And the lens and the cornea work together so that the light that you're getting is focused, and its job is to go into the retina. And the retina is at the very back of your eye. So this light has to actually go through something called the vitreous humor, which is like this jelly-like substance that makes up the majority of your eye. But once it goes through that, it will go to the retina, which is at the back of the eye. It's this thin tissue layer where there are a lot of what are called photoreceptors. And there are two types of photoreceptors. There are cones and there are rods. And cones are responsible for detecting color. And so they work whenever it is really, they're activated when it's bright outside or when you're in a place where there is light, and they work to detect color. And rods are kind of the opposite. Rods are there to detect your blacks, your whites, your grays. They work when it is darker. They help to detect contrast. And they are not utilized whenever it is bright, usually. And I got this information from the Rod Contributions to Color Perception, Linear with Rod Contrast article by Cal, Picorni, Smith, and Zeal. Great article. And so after that light reaches the retina, where all those photoreceptors are, also where your fovea is. The fovea is a kind of a depression within the retina where there are a lot of cones, if I am not mistaken, and it is where the highest point of visual acuity is. So where a lot of your focus comes from. So after that light hits the retina turns that light into electrical impulses, which are sent into the optic nerve. And there's one optic nerve for each eye, and those electrical impulses get sent through the optic nerve into the thalamus, where it is that visual information is processed, and then eventually it reaches the occipital lobe, your visual cortex, where it is perceived. So there are all sorts of different things that are working together in order to make all of this happen. You have neurons, photoreceptors, cells, all of these things that are working together and at the same time in order to make whatever you're seeing happen to create that perception. And so all of this happening simultaneously is known as parallel processing. And that refers to the brain's ability to simultaneously process all kinds of different forms of information. And I learned a lot about parallel processing in the journal article Parallel Processing in Visual Short-Term Memory by Magnuson, Greenless, and Thomas. Another great article. So for parallel processing to work, you have to, or for visual perception to work, you have to be able to perceive the object's shape, the object's size, the motion of the object, if any, and the depth of the object. All of these things help shape what is visual perception. So, but all of this doesn't happen in the same region of the brain. So there is the what system, which is what the object is. And then there's the where system, which is where the object is located in regards to you, in regards to other objects that are around. And so these are occurring in different locations of the brain. So the what system is happening in the inferotemporal cortex and the occipital lobe. And the where system is occurring in the posterior parietal cortex and the occipital lobe as well. So the fact that all of these things are all working together at the same time, that is known as parallel processing. And it's really important for the entirety of visual perception. So visual perception is, of course, not just contingent on what is going on in our brains and in our eyes, but of course it also has to do with the actual stimuli itself. So perception depends on a lot of different factors. So color is a really important factor, depth, brightness, contrast, if the object is moving, our focus on it. And as I was saying before, another thing that can contribute to it is our prior knowledge and experience. So sometimes cultural and social factors are important as well. So despite all of this information that we may have at any given moment, like the color and like the depth and like the perception, or not the perception, like brightness, all of those things, our brain does all of these things unconsciously. We don't even think about it. And whenever there is something that is amiss, our brain will automatically fill in the gaps and try to make sense of the stimuli that we're given. And the ability to look beyond those gaps and fill in the blanks is referred to as gestaltism. And I got that from Visual Perception, an Introduction, which was a book by Wade and Swanston. So gestaltism is essentially being able to piece together information when there is information that is missing, such as depth or such as brightness. We fill in those blanks automatically. So now that we have kind of a picture of what visual perception is, I am proposing a study with regards to color saturation, because we know that color is really important. There have been several studies about people being able to perceive things in black and white versus in color, and how when things are in color, people are able to have quicker reaction times. They're able to more accurately and more quickly guess what the object is. But I didn't really see anything about color saturation. And so I'm hypothesizing that in a study where people are supposed to identify different objects, different images, where there is various levels of color saturation. So something with not a lot of color saturation, where there is low color intensity, versus something with normal color saturation versus something with high color saturation. The higher you go in color saturation, the more quickly a participant will be able to identify that object, even when it is presented to them for just almost in the blink of an eye. So for this proposed study, participants will only be seeing the object for 0.5 seconds, and they will have to immediately try and figure out what the object is that they just saw. And so like I said, I believe that if that were to be a study that was carried out, that participants who were in the condition where there was not a whole lot of color intensity would probably take a lot longer to figure out what the image actually was, and would probably be less accurate than their other counterparts who were able to guess quickly or more quickly due to more intense color saturation. And I think this would be a really good study. I think it would be really helpful. And I think it would help further our already vast wealth of knowledge about visual perception.